Good morning, YouTube. This is Los Angeles Prepper reminding you to buy quality coffee. I do not have a good cup of coffee right now. This is a terrible, terrible cup of coffee. Ugh. God damn. I might, I don't know if you can return stuff at the Dollar Tree, but I might actually try to return this coffee. It's so fucking disgusting. And I'm not going to turn into a rant video because I just finished recording a 12-minute rant video that I don't think I'm going to post because, who wants to see that shit? But let's get down to business. I'm doing a video here on a video response to one of my favorite new subscribers, Ohpervyone. Kind of a funny username, but at any rate, he has a lot of feedback that he shares, and I always appreciate that. And he was commenting on a video that I put up in September about power, food, and water in the world without rule of law. And before I continue, let me look up something that I can talk about later. So he starts off commenting, "Do not buy a generator. Here's why. They require fuel. You have to store fuel long term. That's kind of difficult." And he's talking about California with hoarding fuel laws. And I'm not as familiar with those, to be honest. I'm definitely going to look into it. But, and let me see if I can actually find him real quick. Yeah, it's going to take me a while to find this. So anyways, rules, check your state laws. That's something, honestly, if I want to buy 100 gallons of gasoline, the government is trying to get in the middle of that. Fuck that. I'm not going to flaunt federal or state law, or ignore it, but that's annoying as shit. That's the kind of thing that'll make me move out of state. Stupid shit like that. This is the reason that it's stupid, okay? This is why it's stupid. Because anybody in the fucking planet can go to a gas station with a 60-gallon drum or a 50-gallon drum or whatever and fill it full of gasoline. So to make owning it, to make having that much such a big deal, what are you going to do? Limit people who buy gas and give people permits to buy more than 20 gallons of gas? What if someone's trying to fill up their RV, their boat, their toys, whatever, just a bunch of stuff? They might spend 120 gallons or, a bunch of money to buy 120 gallons of gas. What are you going to limit their gas purchase? And I think some pumps actually do limit the amount you can get out of them, but man, that's annoying. So he's talking. Sorry if you hear the bumping in the background. My neighbors are getting their bathroom worked on, I'm super excited about that today. Oh my gosh. Yeah, super excited about that. So he's talking about don't get a generator because you might run out of fuel, and fuel is hard to store. Those are both very legitimate concerns. He's not going to put any more gas for a while. True. So he's saying, what does he recommend? He's talking about solar panels, he's talking about going with a 100-watt kit and then kind of buying multiple of these kits because they're kind of an easy solution and you can wire up multiple panels together to get a higher output. And then he'll have one charge control device to kind of work them together. So let me actually grab a notepad real quick just so I can comment on. Oh, come on. Sorry, I gotta grab a pen, guys and girls. This banging is gonna drive me crazy. I might need to bug out to school. It's just annoying being in school. I am more productive at school, usually by myself anyways. I just hate being in the computer lab. I hate not having a bathroom nearby and not being able to drink food and what. It just freaking rules, man. Endless amounts of rules at school. Kills. Plus, I can't protect myself at school. I can't have a fucking weapon on me or knife or bat or anything on me at school. I don't have my fire. You know, I'm fucking defenseless at school. Kind of sucks. So, solar panels. I'm talking about the 100-watt kit. I'm talking about combining kits. Redundancy. Batteries. So I've looked into a little bit to power myself. Those 100-watt kits are pretty cool because they're kind of self-sustained. You get like the panel, the charge controller. I think that's it usually. Let me check some prices on eBay just for reference, or Amazon. Yeah, I mean, the more expensive ones are above $150, but, you know, the panel itself, yeah, okay, so about $150, give or take. The panel itself will usually run about 100, somewhere between 90 and 110 bucks. They certainly get more expensive, but somewhere between 90 and 110 bucks, you know, and they're sort of like, kind of pretty big. Like, how big is this one? Like 20 by 30 inches usually, stuff like that. This one is 40 by 27. Okay, so like 3.5 feet by 2 and a bit, 2.25 feet. Anyways, so let me talk, or let me at least, I think I'll finish going through his comment and then I'll reply to everything at once. So he's talking about sort of like slowly adding to your thing. So he's saying like, first I'm going to buy one kit, and he's going to use it to charge like little low voltage stuff. Like you can plug USB stuff into it. So first, that's the one thing. Then his next step, could buy 2 car batteries, or one, you know, or some amount of batteries. You know, 12-volt batteries. Doesn't have to be a car battery. It could be a boat battery. It could be a deep cycle. It could be gel. It could be sealed. It could be non-sealed. 12-volt, big-ass battery. Could be lithium-ion. Doesn't even have to be lead acid. Could be nickel-chromium, or, you know, any nickel-cadmium, or any iron-nickel, or whatever type of battery you want. But anyway, so he's talking about sort of getting a kit, getting some batteries, getting another kit, getting some more batteries, getting another kit. Kind of like slowly building your preps, and that's a really cool way to do it. Okay, so we was talking about investing in a better charge controller. I was going to mention that because you can, you know, the controllers that come with these kits, they're only meant for like the panels that they come with. So say you have 2 kits, you can't just plug in, let's say one kit has 4 panels, 2 kit has 8 panels. You can't just plug in 4 extra panels to the one charge controller. Depending on what that controller's, you know, if you have like a 10 amp charge controller and, you know, it's like putting out 8-9 amps when it's close to its peak, you can't just hook up twice as many solar panels. I mean, possibly you could, but you're either gonna blow the fuse, or you're only gonna get max 10 amps. You're probably gonna blow a fuse or something though. Maybe there's dials and they just don't let the power flow. But at any rate, Yeah, if you want to connect a bunch of kits together, you do need a bunch of cables and you do need a better charge controller. So then he's talking about what happens after you have everything set up. Talking about reducing his on-grid power usage over time. Working on electronic preps. Yeah. Food preps, hibachi grill, can I boil a pot of water? You know, I've been thinking a lot about cooking and energy too, and a hot plate is 1,000 watts. That sucks. That's a lot of freaking juice. Just to give you an example, if you want to run 1,000 watts for an hour, that's 1,000, it's like 1,000 watt hours. If you have 100 watts for an hour, that's 100 watt hour. So, you know, a deciwatt hour, you know, 1,000 watts for an hour is like a kilowatt hour, right? So if you have a 100-watt solar panel, you need to run an 100-watt solar panel 10 times longer than as long as you want to use your electric hot plate. So if you want to use an electric hot plate for 10 minutes, or let's say 6 minutes, you have to run your solar panels for an hour. So that's, now granted, if you have two setups, let's say you have two different setups and you even wire them separately so that they're not together. And let's say you get like, you know, 100 watts out of the system, because a 100-watt panel isn't going to always give you 100 watts. That's not how it works. It's like on a really sunny ass day when the sun is directly over the panel, maybe you'll get close to 100 watts, maybe a little more if they're trying to be conservative on their estimates. But all the times of the day when the sun is not at the right angle, and remember, it's not just the angle that the sun comes up over, it's the inclination. You know, the sun is not, unless you're on the equator, the sun's not directly above you, there's an inclination. So you have to get the inclination right, and then keep in mind that only once during the day, even if your inclination right, is going to be directly overhead, unless your solar panel is rotating, which most people probably are not. So, if you had two solar panels, let's say you want to power a hot plate with an inverter. Sorry, I had some seed in my mouth or something. Say you wanted to power, I'll just like draw it out real quick here. So let's say we have our little charge controller, then our little battery. This is just an example, and Ohpervyone was talking about hooking up, you know, the batteries in series or parallel. As many of you probably know, when you want to double the voltage, you hook up the batteries in series. And I'll most of you probably know how to hook up batteries in series and parallel, but for those of you who don't, I will do a little demonstration. Let's go. And if you want to hook up batteries in parallel, you get more amps. So the reason that I'm mentioning this is amps is kind of like your voltage, is kind of like your potential, your power, like how hard it's hitting, and amps is your ability to like hit it over and over and over again, like to keep providing that power. So two batteries in series will make the motor spin faster. Two batteries in parallel will make the motor spin longer. Maybe not twice as long, but longer. So why is that important for this hot plate example? So let's talk about it here. So let's say you have a speaker that wants to jump off your other speaker. Okay, in fact, these panels are kind of crappy. Let me make them slightly nicer panels. This is why I learned how to do CAD. I'm terrible at drawing. I'm the worst. It's embarrassing. But so let's say you have these two different setups. You got your one panel. Man, feedback on this thing. Your one panel, your charge controller, your battery, and your other panel and your charge controller and your battery. These are completely separate. Separate sides of the house, separate parts of your property, whatever. And then let's also have our little hot plate here, where you're going to boil your pot of water. So this is your little hot plate. It's an 1,000-watt hot plate. Maybe you can get an 800-watt hot plate. You know, I don't know. But Using electricity to make heat is really not an efficient way to do it, so that's kind of why that's crappy. But at any rate, we have 100 watts times 1, 100 watts times 1, okay? So this will put out 100 watts, this will put out 100 watts. You know, maybe like an amp or something, or a couple amps, not a lot of juice. I think actually, well, you can kind of, the amps kind of depends on the watts, you know, anyways, amps times volts is watts. So, but at any rate, you have this panel charging this battery and this panel charging this battery. So how do you want to connect them to get more power out of your hot plate and to not screw up your inverter? In fact, I didn't draw the inverter, but you cannot, as most of you probably know, you cannot connect your battery to your hot plate unless you have a 120 volt battery. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend walking around with a 120 volt battery. That's kind of impractical. Could you connect 10, 12 volts and make a 120 volt house system? Absolutely. You absolutely could. I'll leave that to you. So, back to the difference between series and parallel. So in series, take our negative lead here, go to here. This one is going to go there. And this one come out to positive. Okay, negative, positive. So, in our series, and let me label them real quick. So in series, if we have our positive and negative lead, our negative lead will go to negative on one battery, and then the positive on that battery will go to the negative on the next battery, and that continues for as many batteries as you have in series. Then the positive on the final battery will go to positive. So this will give you 12 to 24 volts if you're starting with 12 volt batteries, but the amps will stay the same. In the parallel setup, we take the negatives, both going to the negatives. Oh, this is a terrible wiring diagram. We take the negative right here. In fact, let me color this real quick because that's terrible. That is terrible. In fact, I'm going to draw a positive over here because it's just easier. Okay, so in the parallel setup, we have two 12 volt batteries. Both their positive terminals are going to one positive, and both of their negative terminals are going to negative. And in this situation, we keep our 12 volts at 12 volts, but we get about twice the amount of amperage. So when you have, if you're Ohpervyone and you have like 5 systems, now he's trying to put all his systems together, but until he gets a better charge controller, he has to keep all his systems separate. But how do you now this is something else to consider, right? What uses more power? One battery by itself to power a hot plate, or 6 batteries all in parallel to power a hot plate? Which setup uses more power to power that hot plate? I'll give you 10 seconds to think about that. Okay. The answer, of course, is it's the same. So, this begs the question, why would you even care about hooking up batteries in parallel if there's no difference between using a kilowatt from one battery versus using a kilowatt from 6 batteries, or a sixth of a kilowatt from 6 batteries? And it's an interesting question. Personally, I would prefer to not run my batteries through big discharge cycles. So the point being, if you have one battery and you run it from, say, let's say 13 volts is charged. Kind of depends on the battery, but let's just say more like 12.8, probably 12.7, 12.75, but I'm trying to make the numbers clean for this example. Let's say 12.8. Let's say you run one hot plate for 30 minutes and your battery goes from 12.8 volts to, let's say, 10.8. Drops 2 whole volts. It might not drop that much, kind of depends on how many amp hours your battery has, but let's just say hypothetically your battery goes from 12.8 volts to 10.8. Is that a big deal? That's actually kind of a significant drop, but the thing is, batteries... Now, lead acid is a lot different than lithium ion. Chemically, the way that they work, there's still ions involved, but they're different materials, that just put that piece of information aside and know that batteries are different. Imagine a battery was like a bucket, okay? Imagine in fact, I'll draw two here. I'll draw a bucket, and I'll draw a battery. So, and there's kind of some fluid in here, but okay. And let me label them because I'm such a good artiste. All right. 12-volt battery, 6-cell lead acid, bucket of water. What's the difference? What's the difference between a bucket of water and a battery? And the electrons, the charge, so to speak, is the water. So the bucket we have water, and the battery we have electrons. So if you want to empty a bucket of water, you dump it out, you have an empty bucket of water. You could also discharge a battery by shorting the terminals. You'd probably burn whatever wire you're using if you use a small gauge wire, but similar. How fast can you empty a bucket? As fast as you can turn it upside down. How fast can you empty a battery? Well, as fast as you can discharge it, but nevertheless, it's not instantaneous. You can't dump a battery upside down and it's empty. Even if you short the terminals, it still takes time for all the electrons to kind of flow. So the point is, this is a chemical reaction. This is just some matter in a space that you're containing. Now, why am I making this example? Presume the battery's empty and presume the bucket's empty. How do you fill up the bucket? You just put water in it, no big deal. The bucket doesn't care how many times you empty it and fill it. It doesn't care. You can do it 1,000 times. The bucket's not going to wear out. The battery, however, it's not the same. There's lead acid, there's all these plates in here, there's a chemical reaction that goes forward and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards. And not only that, but because there's 6 cells and because the juice goes from one cell to the next cell to the next cell to the next cell, when you charge and discharge a battery, especially a lead acid battery, which typically have more, the 6 cells versus like your cell phone battery might just have like 1 cell. Each individual cell is going up and down and up and down and up and down, over and over and over again. And they're not necessarily doing it completely equally. In fact, I found personally that the cells closer to the negative terminal tend to off-gas more and sort of be a little bit more active in the charging. They sort of tend to be like more active cells, whether getting more charge or discharging more, or just in the health of the cell, they tend to degrade faster than the ones near the positive terminal. Because I think that, this is where like the electrons are coming in. Because even though electrons go sort of reverse than what you think, they don't go from positive to negative, they kind of go from negative to positive, but at any rate. So why am I bringing this up? Why does it matter how many times you can empty and charge a battery? Well, back to our previous discussion. Who cares about discharging one battery versus discharging 6 batteries? Or like the example when I said that if you discharge one battery, you go from 12.8 volts to 10.8 volts. And why I would rather hook up 2 or 3 batteries in parallel and go from 12.8 on all 3 to maybe like 12.4 or 12.2 or something on 3. Whatever it is, it's going to be, let's just say it's a third even. So 2 volts, 2 over 3.67. So like 12.1 something, 12.8 minus, 0.6. Yeah, like 12.1, 12 and an eighth or something. Darn it, the fractions are messed up. A 15th. Okay, 2/15ths, I guess. Anyways. So, what's the difference then from going from 12.8 to 10.8 with one battery to 12.8 volts to 12.133 volts with 3 batteries? Back to the bucket analogy. The bucket does not care if it goes from 12.8 to 10.8 and back over and over and over again. Bucket does not care. But your battery is not a bucket. Your battery is a living, to the sense that a chemical reaction is real. It's a living, breathing, it is kind of like a living, breathing thing that you have to take care of. So, look at it, think about it like yourself. What's easier, going on 3 3-mile hikes or 1 10-mile hike? It's obvious. It's not the same. You might burn the same amount of calories, or 3 3-mile hikes or 1 9-mile hike, You might burn the same amount of energy, but you and I both know that a 9-mile hike is different than a 3-mile hike. And a third of a 9-mile hike isn't necessarily the same as 1 3-mile hike, especially if it's the middle third or the last third. Batteries are the same way. Not in that same exaggerated sense, but you can't discharge and charge a battery significantly over and over and over again and expect that everything's going to be great. You don't want to do that. You really don't want to do that. At a pinch, if you just had 1 car battery and you use that for all your off-grid stuff, I guess as long as you were keeping it charged enough, that's good. You would need a chunk of solar. Because if you have 1 battery and you don't have a lot of panels, it's not, if you have a 100-watt panel and you're trying to run the griddle, the hot plate for an hour, we know how that works. So what is the point of this video? What's the point? Power is important. Power is very important. I am kind of the agreement with Ohpervyone. And to be real quick, he talks about some other stuff like what can he power, coffee makers, dorm fridges, egg incubators. I mean, if you want to see all this stuff, he put a lot of time and energy into his replies. So check out my video, Power, Food, Water in WROL, if you want to see all his replies. I definitely recommend giving it a good read through, just to kind of see, what your thoughts are. If you agree, if you disagree, if you think they're great ideas, or if you think they're dumb ideas. We all learn from each other. So, radio, TV, space heaters. Oh, space heaters use so much fucking power. You're better off making something like passive, like, soda cans with black spray paint saran wrap in your window. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up like homemade heater with soda cans and saran wrap and cardboard. Pretty interesting stuff. Computer systems. Yeah, he's making some really great stuff. Build everything, get some redundancy, test it. Solid prepping advice. Carpal tunnel. I know, Pervy. But look, Pervy, I appreciate it. I do. A lot of people haven't necessarily thought. Everyone's, like, oh, I got solar. Did you know your griddle is 1,000 watts? You know how many watts your toaster is? How many watts your microwave is? When electricity is cheap, you don't care. You don't care. Even your laptop, your computer sucks a lot of power. Your cell phone, not that much. Your little handheld portable radio, probably not that much. A few flashlights, not that much. But man, if you're really trying to power a lot of stuff and trying to cook anything, heat, water, think about it. Get a 12-volt battery, hook it up to an inverter, hook it up to a griddle, take the voltage before and after, and let me know. The electric griddle is going to pull a constant amount of amps. So just as a curiosity, let me look up an electric griddle real quick. Oh, it's like hot plate. I got to look up hot plate. Elite cuisine. How could you ever cook anything bad on an elite cuisine? Stupid names. 750 watts. There you go. 750 watt uses 25% less energy than a 1,000-watt burner. Takes longer to heat up your water, but, pros and cons. And in case you forgot my recent equation, if we're running at 120 volts, that's 6 amps. 6.25 amps to be exact. So one of these solar panel systems what's the controller that it comes with? Maximum operating current 5.62 amps. Maximum system voltage 600 volts. I would actually be really impressed. Open circuit voltage 22 volts. Short circuit current 5.92 amps. So I guess this little power controller is a little more capable than... God damn, I really want to find like a specific one. Oh, see, this is just the panel. This isn't the power controller. In fact, I have one on my list. Damn it, I gotta sign in. Fucking Amazon, hurry up. Ugh, piece of garbage. $20 amp. But it still doesn't say how much the panel is going to put out. Well, if it says 20 volts, I mean, look, the thing's like putting out 20 volts. It says it's 100 watts, so I guess 5 amps? That seems like a lot, though. 5 amps. So, if you had 200 watt panels, in fact, how many, I guess you need 20 volts. Let me think about this real quick. 750 watts. What is this panel? See, I feel like you should need 7.5 panels, but I don't know if that's right. I guess that's right. 750 divided by 120. Yeah, 6.25 amps. Oh, this is the calculation I was trying to do. Man, I was getting confused real quick. Okay, what is your max voltage? Come on, fucker. $22 volts. Okay. So There we go. That's what I was looking for. So if you want to run, if you're running all systems together, 34 amps. You need 34 amps at the approximate voltage of what the panel's putting out. So if you want to get a power controller to power a hot plate from solar, which you can do, you need a 34 amp, just get a 40 amp controller, a 35 amp controller, you know. That would be enough to power a 750 watt hot plate. Now if you want a 1000 watt hot plate, 1000 watts divided by 20 volt, or let's say what, 22 volts? 22 volts. You need a 45 amp power controller. So you can see, and you know, I don't know how much is a 40 amp, let's see how much a 40 amp power controller is. Well, 30 amp one is $30. That's not too bad. Easy power 40 amp. Huh. Why solar? Why does it say 10, 20, 40 amp? Weird. $40 amps. So this is a 40 amp controller. Let me show you real quick. Why solar? A 40 amp controller for $25. Man, I would give it a try, to be honest. I really would. So anyways, I know this is kind of turned into a super long video, but power is important. It's not quite as easy as you think, but it's not super complicated either. I definitely recommend trying to get some redundancy in your systems, and when you're looking at combining stuff, you know, this is the reason, like, the one thing I will say about Pervy's plan is that you really don't, the kit, each kit comes with its own charge controller, and ultimately you really only need a couple charge controllers. Having a backup or two might be nice, but instead of getting 6 kits, you could get 1 kit or 2 kits and then just buy panels and buy charge controllers separately, just making sure that you have like the right connections and stuff. Because ultimately your biggest headache is just going to be cables. You know, you're going to have like 6 panels into 4 cables, and those 4 cables into 1 cable, and that 1 cable into your controller, and that 1 cable better be able to handle the 40 amps that all your panels are putting out. You know, it's great to put a 4 into 1, but if that 4 into 1 is rated at 10 amps and you're trying to put 40 amps through it, no bueno. So just, you know, look at the power rating of your solar cables as well. There's different things to consider. Electric appliances use a lot of juice. You know, maybe, a coffee maker if you have the heated plate on would, you know. So do a little bit of math, do a little bit of research. If you guys are trying to put some solar system stuff together, I'd be curious to see what you got going on. I know some of the people that I sub to, that sub to me, have solar stuff going on, but if you want to just do a quick summary of your solar setup, I'd love to see it. I'm sure other people would love to see it. Even if there's a million videos on YouTube, you know, we haven't seen your setup. So like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you're doing with solar, and thanks for watching.